All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into the work of biologist Michael Levin. And I've got to tell you, his ideas are probably going to mess with how you think about life, intelligence, and what it even means to be you. Okay, so let's just start with one of the most wild, mind-bending facts in all of biology, captured perfectly by this quote. I mean, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? But this isn't fiction, this is real life. I mean, seriously, think about that question for a second. Can you, your memories, your personality, survive the complete physical destruction of your brain? For us, that's a terrifying thought. But for some creatures, it's just a normal part of their life cycle. Let's look at the classic example. So check this out. The caterpillar conundrum. When a caterpillar goes into its cocoon, its brain and nervous system dissolve into this soupy goo. The hardware is literally liquefied. It's gone. And yet, when that butterfly emerges, it still remembers things it learned as a caterpillar, like avoiding a certain smell that it was taught to associate with a little electric shock. The memory, the information itself, survived the complete annihilation of the thing that was supposed to be storing it. And then it remapped itself onto a brand new brain in a totally different body. How is that even possible? This idea that intelligence can be liberated from its original hardware is exactly what Michael Levin's lab is pushing to the absolute limit. They're not just observing this stuff in nature anymore. They're actively engineering it. They're taking cells out of their normal context and essentially asking them, all right, you're free. What do you want to build now? And the answer is they build xenobots. These are completely new living machines assembled from, of all things, frog skin cells. And get this, there's no genetic editing, no fancy nanomaterials. It's 100% normal frog DNA. All they did was liberate these cells from their normal job of being frog skin, and once freed, the cells tap into some kind of ancient collective problem-solving ability and self-organize into a new life form, a new creature with new goals, like moving around and even building copies of themselves. Okay, so ghost memories in butterflies and little programmable frog bots. It's all incredibly cool, but you're probably wondering, so what? Why does any of this weird biology actually matter to us in our daily lives? Well, this isn't just some strange science fair project. This has profound practical implications for human health. This brings us to a really radical new way of thinking about disease. Levin's work reframes the problem of cancer not as just a genetic malfunction, but as a fundamental breakdown in cellular cooperation. It's about curing loneliness, but at the cellular level. Think about it like this. You've got two kinds of cells. A healthy cell knows it's part of a team, a massive project to build you. Its identity is wrapped up in being part of a larger self. The rest of the body is us. But a cancer cell? A cancer cell has forgotten the mission. It gets disconnected, it gets lonely, its goals shrink down to just one selfish thing: make more of me. It reverts to an ancient, single-celled identity, and suddenly, the rest of your body isn't us anymore. It's just the environment, something to be exploited. And this is where Levin gives us a tool to actually describe this. It's called the cognitive light cone. Now, this isn't just some abstract theory. You can think of it as the operational metric for health. It's basically the size of the goal a system can work towards. Health is when trillions of your cells share a massive collective light cone. Cancer, then, is what happens when a cell's light cone collapses. It disconnects from the whole, and that retreat into a primitive, selfish existence is the disease. Now, to really wrap your head around these ideas, we have to start dismantling the rigid boxes we put everything in. Living versus non-living, hardware versus software, mind versus machine. Levin argues that these old categories are actually holding science back. They're forcing us to use the wrong tools for the job. Instead, he proposes something like a spectrum of persuadability. The idea is that every system has some level of agency, and the key is to figure out how to communicate with it on its own terms. You use a wrench on a clock, you use training on a dog. So here's the kicker. What if we can find the right persuasion for our own cells? What if we could use the right signals to convince cells to regrow a lost limb or to convince a cancer cell to rejoin the collective? That's not science fiction. That's what his lab is actively working on. This completely reframes that old hardware versus software debate. It's not about the stuff, it's about the pattern running on the stuff. So is the brain the thinker, or is it just the medium, the biological scratch pad, where the pattern of a thought can run? This suggests that we ourselves are like a whirlpool in a river, a stable pattern that persists for a while, even though the water that makes us up is constantly changing. So that brings up a huge question. If these incredible abilities, like a xenobot building a copy of itself, weren't specifically programmed by evolution into its DNA, where did that knowledge come from? Where is the source code for these behaviors? Well, according to Levin, biology is really smart, but it's also really efficient. It doesn't have to invent everything from scratch. It just finds and exploits pre-existing truths about geometry, physics, and computation. These are the free lunches that evolution discovers and puts to use. Now, this is where it gets really out there. He proposes this idea of a Platonic space, a kind of cosmic library of timeless patterns and problem-solving strategies that exist independent of biology. For example, evolution didn't invent prime numbers so that cicadas could avoid predators. It just discovered the mathematical truth of prime numbers and realized, hey, this is a really useful hack. This space is filled with these blueprints and waiting for bodies, for solutions, and maybe even for minds. So if that's true, what does that make us? What's a body or a brain or even a single cell? Well, in this view, they aren't generating intelligence from nothing. They're more like physical interfaces, like antennas, that are tuned to pull down these pre-existing patterns of intelligence from that other space. And that leaves us with a pretty profound and humbling question. If a mind isn't a specific material, but a persistent pattern, then we might be living in a world that is absolutely teeming with intelligences that we've completely failed to recognize just because they don't look like us. And once you start looking, the evidence is everywhere. The molecular machinery inside our very own cells, it can exhibit basic learning, a tiny mind with not a single neuron. And that memory in the butterfly, it's not just passive data. You can think of it as an active pattern that fights to remap itself onto new hardware. It's an agent with a will to survive. And as we've seen, a simple collection of skin cells, when liberated from their usual job, can tap into some latent ability to become a completely new creature, a new agent with new goals out in the world. So this work really leaves us with this one final provocative thought. Maybe our definition of mind and life has been way too narrow this whole time. And maybe, just maybe, the most exciting discoveries are waiting for us right under our noses, in all the systems we've just dismissed as mindless. What other minds are all around us?